Hello friends, this is Manoj Bhuptani. I welcome you all on behalf of the Edupedia world. We have been discussing a few of the relevant topics relating to CIS environment audit. So this is the third video presentation in which I'm going to discuss with you some of the relevant and the most exciting topics with respect to this chapter. So are you guys excited? Are you guys enthralled upon? Perfect guys. Fasten up your seatbelts. We're about to take off with the first topic of the day, and that will be the effect of computers on internal controls. What has been the effect? Now with the advancement in technology, we know that computers are an essential part of our respective lives. I can't presume myself working not on a laptop even for a single day. I just can't believe that. Okay, I just can't think of that. So computers have definitely changed our life. So what's going to be happening if we talk about their effect of computers on the internal controls? If I talk about the internal control of any company, what has been kind of source or what's have been the importance of computers on internal controls? So guys, internal control systems, basically it's going to include your separation of duties, your delegation of authority, responsibility, competent and trustworthy personnel, system of authorization, adequate documents and records, physical control, adequate management supervision, independent check, all these things are going to be covered in that. Okay, in this CIS environment, if I'll talk about, guys, all these components must exist. But having said that, computers do affect the implementation of these internal controls in many ways, n number of ways. Some of the effects, if I'll talk about, okay, let's mark the beginning with first. That is separation of duties. Let's understand. We all are aware of this fact that in a manual system, different persons are responsible for carrying out a function. Let's suppose Ram has been appointed to take care of the initiation of that transaction. Sham is being entrusted with the responsibility of recording that transaction. And then there is Mohan, who is going to take care of the safeguarding of the assets. Okay. So this is something which is usual if I'll talk about with the manual systems. Different persons are responsible for carrying out the functionings. Okay. But is the same thing going to happen in computer systems as well? Absolutely not. This is something which does not always apply in a computer system. For example, in a computer system, a program may carry out the reconciliation of the vendor invoice against a receipt document. And that is the same computer system that is going to also prepare a check payable to creditors. That's going to happen. Let's suppose I entered the invoice. Okay, I'm a computer. I entered the invoice, okay, by checking out that receipt document. And I'm on behalf of that invoice, once I entered, I prepared the invoice on behalf of Ram that I need to settle Ram, let's say 1,000 rupees. Simultaneously, I also prepared a check, okay, which is payable to the Ram. I am entrusting and I'm owing 1,000 rupees to Ram, so I'm going to pay Ram 1,000 rupees check as well on simultaneous basis. This is what? This is basically going to ensure that separation of duties doesn't happen at all. Such operation through a program will be considered as incompatible functions in a manual system. In a mini computer or a microcomputer environments, separation of incompatible function could be even more difficult. Believe me, even more. Such systems, basically such forms, basically allows the users to change the programs and data entry without providing a record of these transactions. Thus, it becomes very difficult to determine whether the incompatible functions have been performed by the system users or not. So, if in case I'm talking about the positivity, that is what that the same computer who's being utilizing the efforts and recording the invoice and settling the accounts on a simultaneous basis, that's good. But you won't get to know in this particular case that whether Ram was entrusted with the responsibility or of initiation of the transaction or not, or whether Mohan safeguarded the assets or not. So separation of duties is something which is missing if I'll talk about the computers with respect to their functioning and their effect on internal controls. That is number one. Number two comes in with the delegation of authority and responsibility. So a structured authority and responsibility is very much essential. Okay, you have your CFO, then you have under him the GM, then you have the senior manager under him, then you have the deputy manager under him, then you have the AM under him. So that's how the hierarchy goes on. Okay, and if some of the work has been entrusted to be performed only by the general manager, this is something which will be done by only general manager. Okay. But now, if I'll talk about something in relation to the same thing with the computer system, now this delegation of authority and responsibility is sometimes missing. Okay, so a structured and authority and responsibility is a very essential control with manual and the computer environment. In a computerized environment, a clean line of authority and responsibility might be difficult to establish because some resources are shared among the multiple users. Even the GM, even the CFO, even me, we all three are going to check and share all same documents. Okay, we have been provided with a kind of rights wherein we can share all those documents together. For instance, if I'll talk about one objective of using a database management system is to provide the multiple users with the access of the same data, thereby reducing the control problems that arise with the maintaining of the redundant data, that is duplicate data, when multiple users have the access to the same data, and what's going to happen is the integrity of that data is going to be somehow violated. And this is not always easy to trace. Who is responsible for corrupting the data? Are you? Is that person who is checking out the records going to tell me up, okay, Manoj sir, you have did the problem over here. How can you be so sure about this thing that whether I was supposed to be accounted as a person mishandled those things or the CFO? There could be a thing wherein both the data is being shared by both of us. Okay, there could be a possibility that he made the entry rather than me. There could be a thing. Okay, so that is something which is missing in these computers with respect to the delegation of authority and responsibility. So you won't be able to do that. Some organizations have somehow identified a single user as the owner of the data. So that's the effect of computer on internal controls with respect to the delegation of authority and responsibility. Coming on to the third point, that is the competent and trustworthy personnel. So guys, skilled, competent, well-trained and experienced information system personnel have been short in supply. We all are aware of them. Since substantial power is often vested in the person responsible for computer information system development, its implementation, its operation and maintenance within that organization, competent and trustworthy personnel are very much in demand. Have you ever thought about this thing? Why people in US, people in UK usually demand for IT professionals from India? Because we get the best of the knowledge over here in Hyderabad or Bangalore. Okay, and that's why brain drain. However, having said that, we are still aware of this problem that still there are not too many good professionals outside available in. So this non-availability of this competent personnel, it's basically like forcing the organizations to compromise on their choice of the staff. Moreover, it is not always easy for the organizations to assess the competence and integrity of their system staff right at the beginning or maybe by the end of the interview. It could be a possibility wherein they won't be able to judge. Okay, so high turnover among those staff has been a very normal kind of a norm. Some organizations have like implemented some of the information systems personnel and they know that they lack a well-developed sense of ethics and some enjoy in subverting the controls. So this is something with relation to their effect on the internal controls. So they lack it and somehow they want more with respect to getting the better people on board so that they can form and fix up the huge amount of automation processes. Next comes the system of authorization. So the management authorization of transaction may be done in two of the manners. Number one, general authorization, which establishes the policy of the organization. Then comes the specific authorization. It applies to individual transaction, case to case basis. So again, you'll be requiring some amount of authorization over here. Absolutely, you'll require that. If in case that's a general authorization, you can proceed with any of the persons around. But if I'm talking about something related to the specific authorization, in a manual system, what's going to happen is you as auditor, you are going to evaluate the adequacy of the procedures for authorization. Is the particular transaction being authorized by one person or another person or another person or another person? It goes on like this, the chain. One transaction that involves the involvement of huge amount, let's say 1 crore amount, that is something which is going to be authorized by a CFO directly. You as auditor are going to evaluate the adequacy of the procedures for authorization. By what? By examining the work of employees. However, in a computer system, what's going to happen is the authorization procedures often are embedded within that computer program. Okay, and it is very, very, very difficult to assess whether the authority assigned to that individual person is consistent with the management policies or not. Thus, in a way, I can say that while evaluating the adequacy of the authorization procedures, auditors have to examine not only the work of employees but also the veracity of the program processing as well. So that's going to be covered under the effect of computers with relation to the internal controls itself. Moving on to the adequacy of the documents and records. In a manual system, the adequate documents and records are required to provide an audit trail of activities. You post out journal entries, then you post out prepare the ledgers. Then from those ledgers, you move on to the TB. Then after concluding with the TB, you prepare your financial statements. So you go step by step, okay, with that audit trail of activities within that system. But if I'll talk about something in relation to the computer system, the document support might not be necessary to initiate, execute, and records for some of the transactions. The task of a visible audit trail is not a problem for auditors, provided the systems have been designed to maintain a record of all the events and that they are easily accessible. In a well-designed computer systems, the audit trails are even more extensive than those maintained in the manual systems. Unfortunately, not all computer systems are well designed. This basically creates a serious control problem. Very serious. Then comes the physical control over assets and records. The physical access to assets and records is very critical, both manual systems as well as computer system. Obviously, guys, assets and controls are the core blood for any of the organization. These are something which will be like called as lifeline. So in a computer system, the information system, basically the assets and the records may be concentrated at a single site. The concentration of information systems with respect to their assets and records also increases the losses that can arise from the computer abuse or disaster. Maybe fire broke out, or if in case some system failure goes on, earthquake happens, or maybe some with respect to the pilferage or hacking of that system goes on. Cybersecurity is being into consideration. So if the organization does not have that another suitable backup, what's going to happen is it might be unable to continue its operations. We have seen the importance of business continuity planning with any kind of organization, be it any. So it's important to have that control over the assets and records. That is why computers take into the picture, and people usually have their documents settled and sorted on cloud basis. Then comes adequate management supervision. In a computer system, the supervision of employee might have to be carried out remotely. The supervisory controls may be built on into the computer system to compensate for the controls that usually can be carried out through observation, and inquiring the computer system can also make the activities of the employees less visible to the management. Because many activities are like electronically controlled, managers must periodically access the audit trail of the employee activities and understand and examine it for unauthorized actions. Is something going on that can include and that can be suspicious to your judgment. So you need to take care of that. So you need to check whether the management supervision is going on adequately if you are using computers on your internal controls from time to time or not. Then comes the independent checks on performance. So the checks by an independent person help to detect any errors or irregularities. In a computer system, what's going to happen is, guys, if a program code is authorized, accurate, okay, and it's going to complete the transaction with the system, this will allow and always follow with the laid down procedures in the absence of any other failure, just like hardware failure, system failure, software failure. It may happen, right? So thus independent checks on the performance of programs often have little value. Instead, the control emphasis basically shifts to ensure the veracity of the program code. As an auditor, what's going to happen to you and what you should do? You as an auditor must now evaluate the control which is established by the product development, program development, modification, exposure, operation, and their maintenance. How it's going on. You need to check that, okay, as an auditor. And lastly, you need to compare the recorded accountability with assets. In a manual system, what's going to happen is independent staff usually prepares the basic data. We all do that, okay. Our associates do that. And the same data is being used for comparison purposes. However, in a computer system, software is basically used to prepare this data. So if unauthorized modifications occur to the program, or if in case the data files are being disturbed by the program usage, or any irregularity happens, that irregularity might not be discovered in that computer system, because traditional separation of duties are no longer applying to the data which is being prepared by the computer on comparison basis. So these are some of the positive effects of computers on internal controls, as well as some of the negative effects. Each thing comes with a pro or a con. We need to address both of them without judging them up. So this was all about the effect of computers on the internal controls. I hope I was able to provide you the complete clarity with respect to each and every point over here itself. With this, all I need to say and make you remember and reiterate to you is, all you need to do is just revise your topics, because that is something which is extremely important. I'll see you in the next presentation with some of the lot more fascinating and exciting topics. Till then, God bless you all. Take care. Thank you. On behalf of the Edupedia world, keep interacting via questions, queries in YouTube comment boxes. I would love to answer each one of your queries and your answers.